ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste my dear friends, this is second video on the life and teachings of Swami Brahmananda, a direct disciple of Paramahansa Ramakrishna. The last video, the previous video, last paragraph was Rakhal's enthusiasm for the spiritual life did not weaken, but after a while he ceased to meditate regularly. Sri Ramakrishna noticed this and asked him the reason. Rakhal answered, I do not always get the inspiration. My heart seems dry and I feel an emptiness. Now, new video starts. You must never neglect your meditation on that account, Sri Ramakrishna told him. Make up your mind to practice spiritual disciplines, then the enthusiasm will come naturally. Those who are farmers by birth and occupation do not and cannot give up farming just because the crops fail. So you must not give up meditation. Even though you may not get any apparent results, you must be regular in your practice. That same day, Sri Ramakrishna went as usual to worship in the temple. Rakhal followed him and sat down to meditate in the hall facing the shrine. Suddenly he saw this shrine grow strangely luminous. The illumination increased in strength and until it was as bright as the sun itself, but mellow, not dazzling. Thus, light began to pour through the door of the shrine and seemed about to engulf Rakhal. He was on the verge of losing consciousness. The sensation frightened him. He got up and went out. Later, Sri Ramakrishna found him sitting silently in his room. Why did you run away? The master asked. You complain that your heart is dry and you don't have any more spiritual visions. Yet you are afraid to experience anything. That is not right. A few days after this, Rakhal was sitting absorbed in meditation in the hall of the temple and experiencing an ecstatic joy. Sri Ramakrishna approached him in ecstasy and gave him a special mantram for his own use. Look, said the master, there is your chosen ideal. Rakhal in ecstatic vision saw his chosen aspect of the Godhead standing before him, living and luminous, with a smile playing on his lips. When Rakhal regained his external consciousness and saw Sri Ramakrishna, he prostrated at his feet with loving devotion. He had known and experienced the divine power and grace of his Guru Sri Ramakrishna. Returned to his room and Rakhal became once more absorbed in meditation. On another occasion, while Rakhal was meditating, his mind became very dry and restless. All his struggles to calm it were of no avail. Disheartened and disappointed at his own failure, he rose from his seat. Then Sri Ramakrishna came to him and said, I see an obstacle on your path. Put your tongue. Rakhal obeyed the master, drew some lines on his disciple's tongue with his finger, and said, "Now go and meditate." At once Rakhal found himself freed from his distractions. During this period, Sri Ramakrishna taught his disciple many kinds of spiritual disciplines, and Rakhal used to practice them with great earnestness, but always in privacy and solitude. Often, when Sri Ramakrishna and his devotees were together, a mood of spiritual fervor would come over the whole group. Then Rakhal would go into ecstasy. Once at the house of Balram, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, the devotees were chanting the name of God and the master was in samadhi. Rakhal was in ecstasy, apparently unconscious. When Sri Ramakrishna came out of samadhi, he touched Rakhal on the heart and thus brought him back to normal consciousness. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna M, a close disciple, records some remarks. M means Master Mahasaya, and Master made about Rakhal's spiritual condition at this time. Rakhal has grown into a very sweet character now. He practices Japam unceasingly. That is the reason you see his lips moving sometimes. When I look at him and notice his mental condition, I often feel inspired and lose myself in ecstasy. Naren, Rakhal and a few others belong to the class of the ever perfect. They are born with God knowledge. As they begin to grow up, they realize the emptiness of earthly pleasures. The Vedas tell us of a bird called the Homa. This bird lives high in the sky. It never comes down to earth. It lays its eggs in mid-air, but at such a great height that the eggs hatch while still falling. The little bird comes out and finds itself dashing down towards the earth. When it sees the ground rushing to meet it, it soars up and rejoices its mother in the sky. Boys like Rakhal resemble the Homa. From their earnest childhood, they see the emptiness of the world, and then their one thought is how to reach God. Sri Ramakrishna also remarked Rakhal at one time became very sensitive to people. He could not bear the sight of those who were worldly minded. I too went through the same mood at one time. Rakhal had another mood in which he loved to be alone and taste the divine bliss in complete absorption. At such times he told me he could not bear even my company. He came here to look after me, but while he was passing through this stage, I had to look after him. During this period, Rakhal had many visions and developed various occult powers, but following his master's advice, he learned to pay no attention to them. To quote his own words, while I was with the master, a man who was living in the temple fell sick. He had no one to look after him, so I nursed him for a few days. One night when I was sitting beside him, his suffering became intense. I did not know how to help him, so I thought I would repeat the Lord's name and pray for his relief. After I had practiced Japam for some time, a kind of slumber overcame me. In that state, I saw a beautiful young girl about 12 years old standing before me. She had the look of a goddess. I asked her, "Mother, will this man be cured? She nodded and answered, yes. The vision disappeared instantly. Next day, the patient recovered. Just as the inside of a cupboard can be seen through its glass doors, so Rakhal could see into any man's heart. He was aware of the character and motives of everybody who visited the temple and would refuse to allow any but sincere, earnest people to enter the master's presence. Sri Ramakrishna learned that Rakhal possessed this power and that he was using it. He scolded him severely, saying, It is mean to use your power this way. He who pays heed to occult powers cannot live in God knowledge. Take no notice of such powers when they come to you. In later years, a man once complained to Swami Sarvananda, a disciple of Maharaj, that they were not real holy men because they did not possess occult powers. When this was reported to Maharaj, he said, it is easy to acquire occult powers but hard indeed to attain purity of heart. To find purity of heart is to know the real truth of religion. There now arose a new obstacle to Rakhal's continuous stay with the master. He became sick and was sent to Calcutta to live in the house of Balram. Sri Ramakrishna wanted Balram to take particular care of his disciple and told him, boys like Naren and Rakhal are born for a divine mission. To serve them is to serve God. Balram felt very happy to serve his master's spiritual child, but the climate of Calcutta did not agree with Rakhal, so with the permission of Sri Ramakrishna, Balram took him to Vrindavan for a change of air. At first Rakhal felt better. He found Vrindavan very inspiring and wrote highly of it to M. What a wonderfully holy place is Vrindavan. The wild peacocks are dancing all around. The air is full of singing and dancing and the praises of the Lord. Here you feel an unending joy in the holy name. Then he became seriously ill. This troubled the master. To quote Sri Ramakrishna's own words, I was extremely worried when I learnt of Rakhal's illness at Vrindavan. Vrindavan is the holy place where Sri Krishna spent his youth, since mother revealed to me that Rakhal is the playmate of Sri Krishna and one of the shepherd boys of Vrindavan. I was afraid lest he should be reminded of his past incarnation if he remembered his association with Sri Krishna while at Vrindavan. He might give up his body there. Therefore I prayed fervently to Divine Mother, and she assured me that I had no cause for anxiety. The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna contains this reference to Rakhal's illness. Sri Ramakrishna speaks of Rakhal while massaging my feet. Rakhal had his first ecstasy. Here a scholar was with me expounding the Bhagavatam. As Rakhal listened to the words of the scripture, he began to feel ecstatic joy. Then he lost consciousness and became still. His second ecstasy was at Balram's house. He fell on the ground, apparently unconscious. Rakhal is a devotee of a very high order. He dwells in the realm of the personal aspect of God. If he hears people talking about the impersonal, he goes out of the room. I prayed to Divine Mother for his recovery. He has renounced everything and he depends entirely on me. When he first went to Vrindavan, he wrote to M. Master, saying how wonderful the place is and how the peacocks are dancing around, but now those peacocks seem to hold no charm for him. Why do I love these boys so much? Because their hearts are so pure. When Rakhal returned from Vrindavan, he found that many new disciples had gathered round the master. Among them, he saw many of his old school friends. Soon after this, Sri Ramakrishna fell ill and was finally removed to the Kasipur garden house. Rakhal accompanied him one after another. Several of the young disciples went to live there and look after the master. It was during this last illness that Sri Ramakrishna established his monastic order and fired his young disciples with the ideal of renunciation. He began to train each one individually according to his character and temperament. To some he gave the Girva cloth, which symbolizes the life of renunciation. Naren and Rakhal were among these chosen few. The master was undoubtedly a very sick man, but he still remained the source and center of a strong spiritual current which transformed the lives and characters of those around him. The Kasipur garden house became a place of bliss, and the disciples' hearts overflowed with joy in God. It was during this period that Sri Ramakrishna prepared Naren to deliver his message to mankind. He taught him how to train the young disciples and organize the monastic order. Every day he would talk to Naren for hours together. In the course of one conversation, he told him, Rakhal has the keen intelligence of a king. If he chose, he could rule a kingdom. Taking the hint and understanding that while the master was still with them, the young disciples had lived in an atmosphere of continual joy and festivity. They were walking the path of God, who is infinite being, infinite wisdom, and infinite bliss. They tasted the delight of their master's presence, and neither the anxiety of the world nor its pleasures and excitement could touch their hearts. Live in union with Brahma and spread the joy of Brahma all around you. That was the truth that the disciples had learned in the Gospel according to Saint Matthew 11:15. We read, And Jesus and unto them came the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, but the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then shall they fast. Sri Ramakrishna was taken away from them, and they felt a void and an emptiness. The master had, as it were, lighted the candles within their hearts with a torch of blazing fire. Now that the torch had gone, they were conscious of darkness. Their own candles still burned, but they were not enough. They wanted the blazing torch, they wanted to be merged in that blissful consciousness once and forevermore. Guided by an invisible hand, thirsting for God and fired with the ideal of renunciation, the young disciples gathered together and formed the Ramakrishna monastic order at Branagar. Naren was the center and heart of this group. Under his guidance, the young disciples engaged themselves in study, discussion, and religious practices. Rakhal was put in charge of the monastery and made responsible for its general welfare. Naren and Rakhal loved and respected each other deeply. Once a young member of the group felt discouraged and wished to leave. Rakhal said to him, "Why do you want to run away? Where is such a wonderful atmosphere here? Where else would you find a holy man like Naren? And where else would you find such love as Naren has for us?" The disciples now devoted themselves wholeheartedly to spiritual practices. Some days they had nothing to eat, and always their meals were scanty. Their only thought was of God, and in this thought they would remain absorbed almost continuously for days and night on end. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, M. Master Mahasaya records the following conversation with Rakhal in the gardens of the Badanagar monastery. "Rakhal, don't waste any more time. Plunge deep into spiritual practices. Why have we renounced the world? Some people say, if you have failed to realize God, why not go back to the world?" But Naren gives the right answer: because we could not find Ram, must we live with? So, must live with. These are the direct disciples of Paramhamsa Ramakrishna. Babu Ram Swami Premanand, the original name, pre-monastic name first, and the name given to their sannyasis. Babu Ram Swami Premanand, Yogin Swami Yogananda, Tarak Swami Shivananda, Sarat Swami Sardananda, Sasi Swami Rama Krishnananda, Hari Swami Turiyananda, Niranjan Swami Niranjanananda, Latu Swami Abhutananda, Gangadhar Swami Akhandananda, Sarda Prasanna Swami Trigunatayita, Kali Swami Abhedananda, Gopal Senior Swami Advaitananda, Subodh Swami Subodhananda. Another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, Hari Prasanna, joined the monastic order some years later and became known as Swami Vijayananda. Shivam and begat children. Naren speaks wise words. Master Mahasaya, what you say is true. I can see that you are filled with a great spiritual longing. Rakhal, how can I describe the state of my mind? This noon I felt a yearning to go to Narmada and practice austerity. Nothing can be achieved without diving deep into meditation. The outside world is full of distractions. Even Sukadeva, the pure and ever free one, was afraid of the distractions of the world. Master Mahasaya, yes, the Yogopanishad describe how Sukadeva renounced the world, the realm of Maya. It also relates a conversation between Sukadeva, his father Vyasa. Vyasa advises him to find God while living his life in the world. Sukadeva answers, the only truth is God. He saw the emptiness of life in the world, the vanity of lust and greed. Rakhal, many people mistakenly imagine that it is enough if one avoids the company of women, but Naren expressed the truth beautifully. Last night he said, woman exists for man as long as he has lust. When you are free from lust, you do not see any difference between the sexes. Master Mahasaya, that is true. Children do not see the difference in sex. Rakhal says, that is why I believe we must plunge deep within to reach enlightenment, a man must transcend Maya, the domain of lust and greed. Most of the young disciples wanted to retire into complete solitude and live absorbed in God. The divine touch of their master had already enabled them to experience the transcendental state. What they had momentarily achieved through His grace, they now wished to win as a permanent possession by their own efforts. They wanted to live utterly in that consciousness. We find Swami Brahmananda eager to go into solitude, live on alms, and dwell constantly in union with Brahma. Maharaj talked to Swamiji, as Vivekananda was usually called, about his intention of living for some time as a wandering monk, surrendering himself completely to God. Swamiji agreed, but suggested that Swami Subodhananda go with him and look after him. Because of his deep love for Maharaj, Swamiji was always concerned for his welfare and wished him to have someone who would minister to his comforts. Maharaj could not refuse his brother's wish, so he and Swami Subodhananda left together for Banaras. They stayed there a month. From Banaras they went on to the temples of Omkarnath by the river Narmada. Here, amidst charming natural surroundings, Maharaj lived continuously in Nirvikalpa Samadhi for 6 days and 6 nights, completely unconscious of the outside world. When at last he came back to normal consciousness, his face shone with a heavenly joy. He had experienced God in the impersonal absolute aspect and had realized the identity of the Atma with Brahma. The two Swamis continued their journey and reached Panchavati by the river Godavari, where Sita and Rama are traditionally supposed to have lived during their exile. There is a temple dedicated to them here. Brahmananda felt and saw the living presence of these two divine incarnations. While chanting the holy name, he became absorbed in samadhi for 3 days and 3 nights. During these periods, Swami Subodhananda used to watch over Maharaj with mingled joy and anxiety. He realized the danger that Maharaj might pass out of the body while in Samadhi and not return to earthly life, and he was always careful to prevent this. From Panchavati they went on to Dwarka, the well-known place of pilgrimage situated on the bank of the sacred river Gomati. In this river, pilgrims bathed in order to acquire merit, paying $1 tax for the privilege. But neither Maharaj nor Subodhananda had any money. A rich merchant noticed this and recognizing them as holy men, offered to pay their tax, but Maharaj refused. He did not wish to buy religious merit and preferred to take his bath in the nearby ocean. This impressed the merchant so much that he also refused to pay the tax and went to bathe with the two Swamis. He invited them to his residence and entertained them for 3 days. But when he offered them money for their further travels, Maharaj refused to accept it. The merchant then offered to give them letters of introduction to his agents in different parts of the country so that their comfort would be assured wherever they went. But Maharaj refused this offer also. I need nothing from anybody. He said, "The Lord is my only refuge, He will look after us." The merchant then gave him a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, which was gladly accepted. From Dwarka, they visited various places of pilgrimage and finally reached Vrindavan. During this second visit to the holy city, Maharaj wrote Balaram the following letter. Who can fathom the workings of God? Who can know His divine play? Man remains subject to happiness and misery as long as he is bound by karma. This is the lot of every man, no matter whether he is learned or ignorant, good or wicked. Rare indeed is he who has attained unalloyed bliss. Only that man who is free from all cravings can find unending joy. There is more misery than happiness in this world. Most people live in misery. God the Father is loving and kind. Who can explain why his children suffer? Man suffers because of his ignorance. This ignorance is his sense of ego. When a man is free from this egoism, surrendering his life, his mind, and his intellect at the blessed feet of the Lord of all, renouncing all that he calls his own, then is he blessed indeed. That man alone is truly happy. Of himself man can accomplish nothing. There is only one thing to be done: pray to God and pray unceasingly. Thus we may forget the ego altogether and continually remember that God alone is real, that God alone is the truth. Then only can we be freed from ignorance. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, how many love God as they love their own kith and kin? How many even want to love Him? The mind is created out of those three gunas which also make up the outer world. Because of this, the mind finds delight in dwelling on worldly thoughts. This is the very nature and stuff of the mind. It is only through divine grace that a man can withdraw his mind from the external world and keep it fixed on God's holy feet. I pray to the Lord that I may be completely freed from consciousness of the physical world. Bless me that I may remain absorbed in the lotus feet of the Guru. That is the one desire of my heart. Here in Vrindavan, Brahmananda lived in a state of continuous ecstasy, almost entirely losing his consciousness of the physical world. His brother disciple lovingly watched over him, but Brahmananda rarely spoke to him. His mind dwelt constantly in another realm. Bodhananda would beg food for him, have to sit like a beggar begging for the Lord's grace. What you say is true. Maharaj answered, the master did do everything for us, but still I find a lack within. This proves that we need repeated practice in order to make the state of samadhi natural and habitual to us. You know, Uddhava was a devoted disciple and friend of Sri Krishna. Through his grace he realized God, and yet Sri Krishna sent him to the Himalayas to live in solitude and contemplation. Vijaya Krishna Goswami, a well-known saint who was living in Vrindavan at this time, asked Brahmananda the same question. He replied simply, I am only trying to become established in that vision of God which I received through my master's grace. Vijaya Krishna and Maharaj would often meet and talk together about God. In time, Subodhananda himself became eager to live in solitude and practice austerities. So, with the blessings and permission of Maharaj, he went to Hardwar at the foot of Himalayas. Left alone in Vrindavan, Maharaj had no time to feel lonely, for again he plunged into the consciousness of God. Suddenly, one day, he saw in a vision the shining form of his devoted brother disciple Balram standing before him. On his face was a heavenly smile. Gradually, his form merged into the light of the divine realm. Next day, Maharaj received the news that Balram had passed away. At first he felt a pang of grief for he loved Balram dearly. Then he realized that this sorrow also was a form of attachment. More strongly than ever he felt a desire to forget the things of the world and plunge deeper into the inner kingdom of God. He left Vrindavan and began to walk towards Haridwar. At Hardwar, Maharaj was overwhelmed by the grandeur and beauty of the Himalayas and of the Ganges running its course at their feet. 2 miles from Haridwar is the quiet little village of Kankhal, sanctified by the presence of many monks belonging to various orders who go there to lead contemplative lives. There Maharaj settled in a little hut not far from the Ganges. The present Ramakrishna Mission home of service is now situated on that very spot. Swamis Vivekananda, Turyananda, Shardananda, Subodhananda, and other monastic disciples of the Master were then leading contemplative lives at Rishikesh in the same neighborhood. It was not long before they learned that Brahmananda was at Kankhal and they all went to visit him. Vivekananda wanted to go to Delhi and asked Maharaj and the rest of his brother disciples to accompany him. Maharaj could not refuse any wish of Swamiji's, but first he wanted to visit Swami Akhandananda, another brother disciple who was living in Meerut too. Therefore they went and spent some memorable days in meditation and study, happy to be in one another's company. Then Swamiji left for Delhi alone. The rest of them followed later. The lives of holy men and especially their travels must often appear curiously aimless to the ordinary observer. Ever obedient to the voice of God within them, they make no fixed plans as worldly people do. All their intentions are subject to unexpected change. No sooner were the Swamis gathered in Delhi than Vivekananda told them that he must go on alone. The inner voice commanded him to seek solitude. We shall meet again when the Lord wills, he told his brothers as he said goodbye. Maharaj now asked Swami Turyananda to accompany him on his pilgrimage. The Swami readily agreed, which pleased Maharaj very much, for Sri Ramakrishna had once told him to keep company with brother Hari. In Hari, Turyananda, devotion and knowledge were harmoniously developed. Deeply learned in the scriptures, he lived a life of great austerity and immaculate purity. Sri Ramakrishna used to speak of him as a man of renunciation, strictly embodying the ideal of the Gita. The two Swamis now travelled together, mostly on foot, and visited many sacred temples in the northern part of India. Turyananda has told us that whenever Maharaj entered any shrine, he would be filled with ecstatic devotion for that particular aspect of God to which the temple was dedicated, and that ultimately he would have direct vision of the living deity within that temple. In later years, when Maharaj was asked by a disciple of the gods and goddesses are real, he answered, the one Godhead has many spiritual forms. All these forms are real. A seer can see them and talk to them. After nearly 2 years of pilgrimage, the Swamis arrived in Bombay. There they met Kalipada Ghosh, a devoted disciple of the master who lived in that city. A joyful surprise awaited them, for at Kalipada's house was Swamiji himself. Since the parting at Delhi, they had known nothing of his whereabouts. Swami was now preparing for his first journey to the United States of America. Before embarking, he was requested to go and bless the newborn prince of Khetri. Brahmananda and Turyananda went with him on the train as far as the Abu Road station. While Vivekananda was with the prince, they visited Mount Abu, where there is a beautiful Jaina temple. A few days later, they returned to the station in time to exchange a few words with Swamiji as his train passed through. This meeting was very short. Swamiji hastily told Turyananda, please go back to the Badanagar monastery. You are wanted there. Let Raja live alone. Turyananda had no time to explain to Swami that he could not leave Maharaj alone. Just then Brahmananda's spiritual consciousness was tuned so high that he had no regard for his body and could not look after it. So they remained together, and the two of them returned to Mount Abu, where they lived a life of contemplation. Turyananda begged food for his brother and watched over him just as Subodhananda had done. After some time, Maharaj felt that they should return to Vrindavan. Here, Turyananda experienced a mood of ecstatic joy. I am not going to beg any food today, he told Maharaj. Let us see if Radha, the holy mother of Vrindavan, will feed us. They sat down to meditate. Day and night passed for both in blissful absorption without any consciousness of hunger or thirst. Next morning, as they rose from their meditation, they saw a devotee approaching them with quantities of food. By this time, they were both hungry and ate with relish. After a few days in Vrindavan, they went to Lake Kusum, a solitary place near the holy city. On the lake shore, there are huts where monks can pass their days in solitude and contemplation. There the Swamis lived for months, completely forgetting the outer world. Swami Turyananda told me of an interesting experience Maharaj had at the Lake Kusum. For several nights in succession, as he sat down to meditate, he was disturbed by peculiar noises and by the falling of pebbles and dust around him. At length, Maharaj saw the spirit of a dead man standing before him. Why are you disturbing me like this? He asked. The spirit admitted that he had been trying to attract the Swami's attention and begged Maharaj to liberate him from his pitiful condition. Maharaj replied that he did not know how to do this. You are a holy man, the spirit told him. If you will just pray for my release, I shall be liberated. Maharaj did as he was asked. So I stop the video at this place. Thank you, my dear friends. This is wonderful. Swami Brahmananda, Vivekananda and other direct disciples. When I'm narrating, I'm really feeling the vibrations. My dear friends, please listen and see these videos and share these videos with your friends and relatives, especially children. They must be made to listen these videos. Holy people. Thank you, my dear friends. Namaskar. 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 Namaskar.